Hello everybody and welcome to rpmat.com YouTube channel. This is my first video and today we're going to be talking about how to plan your first trip to Europe. So for some people this can seem overwhelming, maybe you don't know where to start. I will say that traveling to Europe is very similar to traveling within the United States or maybe Canada. It can be a little bit easier than traveling in, say, Africa or South America at first. But if it's your first time, hopefully this video will help you out. And so let's get started here. So the first thing is you're going to want to make sure that whenever you look for flights in particular, you want to be on private browsing of some kind, right? So if you're on Safari, that's just private browsing. If you're on Chrome, that means incognito mode. And the reason for this is that your cookies will not be tracked as heavily, if at all. And when the airlines track your cookies, they can see, what kind of dates and what routes you might be looking for. And they'll use this to kind of, price accordingly when you look the next time. So if you don't book the first time that you look, you might go back and realize that the price has gone up, a couple $100 or something like that. So this is why you want to be on incognito mode. To keep going further, so once you go to Google Flights, you're going to want to go to the top left here. There's the Explore page. And for today's example, we're going to use the departure destination is going to be Dallas. So we want to change the filter to US dollars, and then we want to do Dallas as our departure. You can then change the dates, so you can be specific if you have a time constraint, or if you're just looking for the cheapest flight, you can be flexible. For this example, I'm going to go ahead and pick June as the month, which is going to be most likely the most expensive. If you were really looking for a budget flight, you could just do all, and you'd get some January, February flights that are really cheap. They're usually cheap for a reason, and that is that most of Europe is very cold in the winter. So not everybody's going to travel there. Whereas June, obviously, people are out of school, beaches are open, cities are nice and sunny. It's a very different experience. But let's go ahead and plan a summer trip. I'm also going to filter for 1 stop or fewer so that we're not doing any weird 3 or 4 stop layover routes. So this could also eliminate some budget options. But, for the sake of comfort and convenience, let's go ahead and take a look at this. So now, when you look at this map, you'll see not much under $900. If you looked at all the months, you might see some for $400 or $500, right? So it can fluctuate depending on the season. One thing that I like to look at is if there's a certain city that sounds good, but maybe it's more expensive than its neighbor, I will look to fly into the neighboring city and take a train or budget airline from there. So, for example, you can save $200 on your flight by going to Prague instead of Krakow. But once you get to Prague, you can most likely take a train in a few hours, or you could take a budget airline, and most likely you'll still save money versus paying the extra $200 to go straight to Krakow. That's just an example. Another great example is Munich. So Munich here is $1,300. Or you could fly into Zurich or Prague and save $300 to $400. And then you can easily catch a train or like I said, a budget airline from those places. And on top of that, you'll get to see an extra place on the way, which may not appeal to you. You might just fly into Zurich and immediately hop on a train. Or you might spend a day in Zurich. Although I will say, if you spend a day in Zurich, you probably won't save that $400 after all. So for this example, we'll go ahead and pick Copenhagen. Which is a little bit more expensive than some of these other cities. Not the flight, but the actual city itself. But then we'll go ahead and we'll do this Finnair flight. So it leaves on Sunday, June 1st, and it arrives on Monday, June 2nd at 12:35 p.m. You have a stop in Helsinki. A little bit of a short layover considering you have to go through customs, but we should be able to do it. And then on the way back, I would go ahead and just pick up this extra $60 on the flight so that you don't have a 13-hour layover in Helsinki. If you wanted to explore Helsinki, then maybe the 13-hour layover is not a bad idea. You could easily go through security, come back out, and explore the city for a bit before you go back to the airport. So certainly a good option, and it'll save you $60 on the flight. Worth noting, it probably won't save you $60 overall by the time you grab a meal in Helsinki, but something to look at. Once we have our flight booked, we're going to move on to booking.com in order to get our hotel. So as I mentioned, we're not going to arrive till June 2nd, so we want to go ahead and look at the hotels in the city from June 2nd to June 9th. And for now, we'll assume there's only 2 adults. Obviously, could be one of you, could be a multiple family of 4, family of 6, something like that. But for now, let's just assume it's you and a friend, or maybe you and a partner. What I like to do on Booking.com is use a few of their many filters. So I typically am worried about location, quality of the hotel. That doesn't necessarily mean 4 stars, but I like to see that they've had a good rating from the Booking.com users who have stayed there. And occasionally I will also filter for price or type of accommodation. So you might want to stay in a hostel versus a hotel, or maybe you want to have an apartment or a homestay. So you can do that pretty easily on Booking.com. For here, I'm just going to pick the location, which is going to be the center of the town and the guest's favorite area. And then I'm also going to pick 8+ as the rating. Now, when I look at the map here, there's quite a few expensive locations. So I'm going to go ahead and filter my budget by night to get some cheaper ones. And then I'll look around. What you'll see, some of these are hotels, some of them are apartments, and some of them are kind of a mix of a hotel and a hostel, or maybe it's a hostel that has a hotel room, for example, something like that, right? What I'm going to do is go ahead and go down to Next House Copenhagen. Then I'm going to scroll down, look at the different rooms. You can see that most of them are free cancellation before May 30th. Some of them are you renting out an entire room in a hostel. Some of them are you renting out a single room in a hostel. And some of you are just renting out a bunk. So you can see that if you were to rent the bunk for the whole time, it would be £200 versus £800. And you could change this to dollars or euros or whatever you need to do in Booking.com, whatever's easier for you. Mine just defaults to pounds. So I'm going to go ahead and go with this double room, assuming it's me and my partner, for example. Obviously, even if it is you and your partner, you could do the bunks and still save £400. And we'll go in here. Like I said, it's free cancellation. Most likely, that means that you won't have to pay up front. This one does say you'll pay the property before arrival. However, if we scroll down on the left, you'll see that it says you'll be charged a prepayment of the total price within 3 days of arrival. So basically, as long as you cancel before May 30th, this money will never leave your account. And hopefully you won't need to cancel, but if you need to, you can. Now, once you are in Europe, if you don't want to stay in the city that you flew into, you have plenty of options for getting around. So the main way that I prefer to travel is via train. You can, I like trains because you don't have to deal with the airport security, those type of hassles. Typically you get to see some of the countryside and more of, how daily life is there. So when you're traveling by train, I typically recommend everyone to go to The Man in Seat 61. He's a blog on train travel, primarily in Europe, but he has plenty around the world. So you can see here on his front page, for example, you can do train travel worldwide, and he has a map or a list of countries that you can pick. So there's a Trans-Siberian Railway, all sorts of countries in Asia and Africa, and even some in Latin America. And then, for this example, obviously we just need train travel in Europe. So I'm going to use Copenhagen as my initial destination. And then from there, you can go to any one of these cities. I'll pick, you could pick whatever you wanted. You could go to Helsinki, Gothenburg. Maybe you want to go down to Poland, something like that. So I would just use his account, and you'll find lots of good information on here. So yeah, and then another great option is if you go back to Google Flights, you can use Google Flights just starting from Copenhagen, and you'll find there's plenty of budget airlines, especially in Europe. Typically, Europe and Asia are pretty good at budget airlines. Other places, it's a bit hit or miss. Obviously, within the U.S., we have a couple budget airlines, but most of the time you're going to be paying $200 or $300 to fly anywhere. So that could be annoying. In Europe and the UK, you can probably find some really good flights for under $100. So depending on where you want to go and bounce around, that might be a great option as well. That's all I have today. So thank you for watching this video. I also have a blog post on the subject that I'm going to link below. And if you like this content, please feel free to like and subscribe, or comment if you have any questions on further information. and I'll try to get back to you.